It's like, guys, it's just running. You put on little shorts, you go run around, it hurts for a while, you think you can't finish. 10 minutes later, you're standing there with your little cup of Gatorade, all sweaty, and you feel completely fine most of the time. Like, come on, let's not make more of it than it is. We had a guy on the team a few years ago that he says, you know, Coach Cole loves to always say that it's just running. But if you've come through our program, you know it's about a lot more than that. We don't have names on the back of our jersey. We take a lot of pride in the one in the front.
What's the legacy you want to leave behind in Colorado Springs?
I think it goes back to, that's a tough one.
Coach Cole, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. Really stoked to make this one happen. I was a big fan of the YouTube videos not too long ago, a few years ago, that I'm sure you're very familiar with, that I'm sure some of the audience is familiar with. I think former athlete on the team sort of went into more of an ops role and started filming some behind the scenes. And it was really cool to sort of see this YouTube version of a little bit running with the Buffaloes inside a military academy, which was really cool. But I'm really excited to have on a coach from a military academy. One, because I obviously respect the service and all you do for our great country. But secondly, I grew up in middle school with a grandfather who watched the Army-Navy game every single year and the history and the tradition. And then to see a military academy really be pushing against some of the other top schools and the NCAA was remarkably cool, because I understand the challenges you guys face versus the, no offense, the NAU students who get their communications degree and just kick up their feet in Normatex all day. A little bit of a different situation. So how do you guys do it? How do you compete against the best of the best with the constraints of focusing on the military operations that come alongside being a student?
Well, there are a lot of variables, I think, that play into that. I would argue that some of those same challenges, but I always tell our recruits and our young athletes when they're joining the program, the same things that are challenging at the beginning become assets by the end. So I think when you look at the time management, stress management, just learning how to deal with whatever comes your way, while still structuring your time and energy, learning how to get sleep so that you're functioning at a high level with whatever you're doing, a lot of those same variables that benefit you as a cadet here at the Air Force Academy also will benefit you as a runner. So I think it's like a lot of places, getting into routine, figuring out, you know, how to manage your day, your week, your month, your year. And then a lot of it too stems from the culture that we have and having people that have went through that learning curve, and then helping the new people when they come in go through that learning curve, and then it starts to snowball. So that's a big piece of it as well. But yeah, I always like to think that what's challenging at the beginning becomes an asset by the end.
One thing I want to ask you about is sort of when you're in this recruiting process, I'm assuming people get weeded out very fast. And is the option generally between military academies, or do you find a lot of athletes it's generally between choosing one life path and another? Because the difference between going to the Air Force Academy and, sure, I'll use them again, NAU, is it's a completely different life result. Like your job's going to be different one day. Who you marry is probably going to be different one day. Like you are choosing two drastically different life paths and choices.
Sure, but I do think there are a lot of individuals that are looking at going to a service academy. Maybe they grew up with military connections, or they had some friends or acquaintances that went through the process, or they've interacted with people throughout their life up to that point that have some experience with the service academies. But then we also try to be pretty diligent with our outreach and helping inform people about what these opportunities are. And you mentioned the YouTube videos, and we definitely have to give a shout out to Chris Floyd, who put those together while he was a part of our program and did an absolutely phenomenal job. I think a lot of individuals out there just may not know much about the service academies or the Air Force Academy and the opportunities that they have here, not just from an academic or career standpoint, but also knowing you can come here and achieve at a really high level in cross country and track and field or other sports. So I think a lot of it is just trying to get that information out there and let people know what the opportunities are, just because I think probably one of our biggest challenges here is that people just are not aware of the opportunity.
What is the general gist of, like, because I'm sure this has happened, a kid who has no interest, you reach out and they end up coming. What does that process look like, getting them interested?
Yeah, first of all, it's figuring out maybe why they're not interested or what they're interested in. And then once, like if you have somebody that wants to be like a high school art teacher, this is a very atypical route to go in that pursuit. But if you have somebody that maybe they don't know what they want to do, but they want to set themselves up really well for the rest of their life. I mean, you come into a situation here where it's academically rigorous. You're going to take a lot of different courses. You could want to be an astronautical engineering major and you're going to take English and philosophy. You could want to be a history major and you're going to take aero and astro engineering. So you're going to take a lot of different courses that are going to help develop you as a young person. You graduate debt-free, you have a guaranteed strong paying job for 5 years, and then you're immersed in an amazing network of people, whether you stay in 5 or 25. So I think a lot of that is just figuring out maybe why they don't think they're interested or what they're interested in, and then talking to them about the opportunities that they'll have here and what that not just path through college looks like, but path beyond. So yeah, we have had that on occasion where someone will maybe think, yeah, I'm not interested in the military. And so you ask them, what does that mean to you? Like, what does it mean, military? Or what are you interested in? Why? I want to own my own business someday. It's like, well, you can come here, become a business management major, go out at 23 years old as a young officer, be responsible for a multi-million-dollar budget, and have about the most amazing internship first job you could possibly have. So then when you go into the private sector or you're looking at becoming an entrepreneur, your skill set and your experience level are light years ahead a lot of your peers. So it really is about finding what they're interested in and then seeing if there's a way to connect that with the opportunities that we have at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah, this is great stuff. Great substance. I want to dive into sort of what you're saying, but slightly off of it, which is across this the military academies, but we can make it specific to Air Force. I don't mean to bring up rivals on this podcast. You can kind of tell when you meet someone who's been formed by these schools. They carry themselves in a certain kind of way. They stand a certain kind of way. They shake your hand in a certain kind of way. The eye contact, how they invest in you, how they make themselves feel interested in you. There are people I've met on the street where I ask where they went to college, kind of knowing what they're going to say because of how they're formed. You're inside it. What does that formation look like to form these people who then go on to do these amazing things?
Well, it really starts with the process to earn an appointment to come here. And so whether somebody going through that process ultimately decides to attend a service academy or not, it's a very rigorous process where one example, they're going to have some sort of communication, whether it's an interview, it may be with a congressional staffer, it may be with a congressman or a state senator. There aren't many people going through high school applying for colleges that even have that experience. So it really starts in the thought process or the decision to engage with the appointment process and apply. And then once you earn that appointment, I mean, when I first came to Air Force or was looking at coming to Air Force, I was a little bit concerned about it because one of the very first experiences you have when you're here is basic training. And then the very first full day of basic training, you're getting on a bus and it's a military-based basic training period. So there's going to be some loud guidance in terms of where to go and when to go there and how to get there. And so it creates a stressful environment right away by design. And a lot of people, I think, focus on basic training as this learning how to operate within the military infrastructure and lifestyle. And it's a super stressful, you're getting yelled at, that sort of thing. You don't sleep a whole lot. But what they maybe overlook is, yes, you have to create a stressful environment to then practice learning how to become comfortable in that environment. And there's an immense support network to help you do that. So as you come in, you're going to be put in a very challenging environment right away. And then you're going to receive a lot of support, not just from an athletic end, but in the classroom, in your squadrons, in your dorms, kind of in your day-to-day, where you have a lot of entities helping support you work through that process so that you learn how to handle and navigate all of the things that you have to do here at a service academy. And then the skill set that you develop, like you mentioned, when you're out there, after college and in the workforce, some things that maybe people that haven't went through those experiences will be thrown off by or kind of beat down by, our people tend to do really well because of the training and development that they've had.
Go back in your brain. Are there examples to you of freshmen come in on day one? I know you call them different terms. Aside, I'm totally going to butcher certain terms you have in this podcast. I didn't thoroughly do my research enough, and each service academy does it differently, which makes it hard to keep up with. But do you realize the crazy character development, first day freshman year to senior walking out, and you think, wow, this person has utterly transformed themselves?
Yeah, had a conversation with one of our rising team captains yesterday, and that was part of our conversation was bringing the freshmen into the fold once they're through basic training here in a few days, as well as our freshmen elevating into sophomores and the transition that they're going through, and remembering when he was going through that process, which had its challenges, there were some bumps in the road. And just as he communicates with them, remembering what it was like to be in their shoes. And that was one of the things I told him, that if you would have rewound to 3 years ago and told me that I would be having this conversation with this young man 3 years down the road as captain, I would have had the same reaction. I would have started laughing, be like, I don't know. I'm not sure we're going to quite get there. And that happens pretty regularly. So as amazing as it is to see people come into the program as a freshman or, that first year cadet and develop as an athlete, it's also pretty tremendous to see how they develop as a young person from the time that they're, getting that first phone call or responding to an email or a message in the recruiting process to walking across the stage and saluting as a young officer about to go out into service for our country. It's pretty amazing. And it's also really cool, Dominic, because they're not isolated instances, right? Like they become better, not just athletes, but better leaders on the team, better enforcers or developers of our culture because of what they're going through in their development as a young person. We call it on the hill, but as a cadet. So it's really neat to see how one benefits the other and vice versa.
I'm assuming because of all the formation in leadership and training, you'd probably put your team captains up against anyone else in the country, I'd assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to talk about sort of the history of the role that you're currently in. Ralph, can you say his last name so I don't butcher it?
Yeah, Ralph Lindemann.
Yeah, Ralph Lindemann was at that program for years and years. You were under him. You recently took over as director, I think, in 2022. So sort of new as, manning the ship, but you've been within the system for years. What was it like taking over from such a legendary guy and now sort of creating this program for your own and sort of the next chapter and evolution of it?
Well, I don't know if you can never replace someone like Ralph. And so I think he was here 33 years. And if you look at the history of Air Force track and field, there's a trophy behind me from back in the 60s. And Mike Ryan, who is probably one of the most overlooked, just absolutely tremendous college careers at the Division I level in cross country. I mean, he was top 3 at the NCAA championships 3 out of 4 years, finishing first, second, and third, and was the last collegiate, I believe, to beat Steve Prefontaine in college. And not too many people. Yeah, not too many people know about Mike Ryan here over my shoulder. But I also have, there's a picture of Ralph on the bookshelf as well. So he's in the office every day, too, making sure that we're keeping this thing going the way it's supposed to. But I think one of the ways that you try to honor someone that not only, personally gave me an opportunity here at the Air Force Academy, but really built the program from transitioning to the Division I level kind of in the more modern era of collegiate athletics, and built it into a very respectable, highly competitive program athletically without losing sight of why we have athletics here at the Air Force Academy and what our cadets go on to do after. So trying to continue to elevate that, I can't think of a better way to honor him. But that ultimately, you want to honor the past while also investing in the future. And I think there are some things that we can continue to evolve and be highly competitive with our track and field program overall. But yeah, I mean, Ralph really set the tone for our program. And so continuing to come into work every day and wanting to honor him by seeing how strong you can make our team, I hope he will be proud of that.
Do you remember getting the call or meeting, or what was it when you found out you were taking over the reins?
I remember it vividly. And it was a pretty tough situation because Ralph passed right after our indoor conference meet. So it was in the transition from indoor to outdoor, and it was a Sunday, and I was in the office. So yeah, that was a very challenging situation. And one thing that I try to remember, I'm not, an alum. I'm a civilian. I was not military, and so it's been a privilege to step into this role at a military institution as a civilian. But you also have to set an example that our people are supposed to follow in whatever role you're in here. And we talk about being able to do hard things and working through difficult situations. That was one of the hardest situations I've ever had to work through. Because on one hand, it's very personal. On the other hand, you have, the transition from indoor to outdoor is about 5 days, right? So we had a group of people that were experiencing a range of emotions that we needed to bring together and support them while they worked through something a lot bigger than just track and field. While at the same time, Ralph invested his life into this, and he would have been furious had we taken a really strong track and field team that spring and underperformed because of that situation that he cared so much about seeing our program succeed. So it was definitely a balance with trying to continue to help our people prepare for a track season that was occurring and making the most of that, because those individuals didn't get an extra year of eligibility for our seniors because of that situation. And if that was their last opportunity to have an outdoor track season and they have invested years in developing themselves for that opportunity, you want to help them take advantage of it, while at the same time working through something that was so much bigger than just college athletics. So I remember that transition vividly, and it was, it was one of the harder things that we have went through here at the Air Force Academy.
You mentioned the runner to, at least you're right, my left as the viewer. And I think a lot of people don't realize how good these programs used to be. I think I'll probably be off on this, but I think Army or Navy, they either won a championship back in the day or were close to it. You mentioned that runner. I quite frankly had no clue about that and the accomplishments you mentioned. If that was present day NCAA, you would have a fat check from a shoe company knocking on his door because that's just rarely done. What's the history of these academies being really great? And then tying it sort of to present day, the resurgence of the Air Force Academy over the past few years, it seems like you guys are trying to knock at the door of saying, okay, let's get back to that place. Let's be great again.
Absolutely. I think when you look back in the, quite a while ago, 50s, 60s, 70s, you saw the service academies be very competitive, but you also see other programs out there in the NCAA that when you look back at their history in that time frame, Michigan State comes to mind. They were very, very competitive in men's cross country. And then from about the mid 70s, when there became more of a qualifying process to get to nationals, from about the mid 70s to around the 2000 timeframe, the Air Force Academy qualified on the men's side about once every decade for the national championships in cross country. We had some strong performances in track and field. The women were not Division I up until more recently in the past, so they went through a different transition, going from Division II to Division I. But it was a challenge for sure, and I think when I evaluated this opportunity and when I came into the program and said, okay, what are we trying to do with Air Force track and field? One of my predecessors was Mark Stanforth. And in a 5-year stretch, Mark had the men at the NCAA championships for D1 in cross country 4 out of those 5 years, including a top 10 finish and a couple top 20 finishes. So Mark showed that it could be done in the modern era. I think when you look at historical limitations, it's changed here over the last few years, but historical limitations for men's distance running, is really scholarships. And at the Air Force Academy, everybody's fully funded. So every single person you have on your team, all 4,000 of our cadets here on full scholarships. So that was not a limitation. I was concerned that, maybe from a women's side, recruiting women to the military was going to be a challenge, and maybe we wouldn't be able to be as competitive there. And I'm really proud of what, the women have done in our program over the last decade, showing that, you can put on an Air Force uniform and it doesn't matter what gender you're in or what event you're in. You can go out and go toe-to-toe with some of the best out there.
And you now guys, real quick, you qualified, the woman qualified 2016, right? First time ever?
Yes, first time, first time Service Academy for Division I, and then came back in 19 and finished 8th in the country. So that was pretty cool.
Unreal. And I'm just recalling from Chris's YouTube video, the men top finish 6th. Was it 6th? 7. Yeah. What do you feel in those moments? Like when it just all comes together on a crisp November day, all the hard work?
I mean, it's pretty exciting for sure. I remember because I was quite a ways away from the finish shoot in Terre Haute when the women were 8th, and you watch the live results on your phone, and the women were having a really strong run, and it was like, okay, just like get to the finish line, pass a few more people. Let's see, finish this thing off because it's been a pretty special day, and just kind of standing there looking at the phone with the final result. There were a lot of different emotions, but just really proud of that group of women and the women that have come before them, helping set that tone and build that environment where they'd be able to do it. Dominic, I haven't moved here in my office, so the lights, there we go. Lights are back on here.
Got to keep it entertaining for the viewer.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think looking at just that outcome was pretty special, but also the path to get there. And one of my peers who was in our conference, and he oversaw one of the most successful women's distance programs in the Mountain West for a long time, came up to me after that race and said, no offense, I don't know really any of the women on your team. Like, how did they do that? And I told him, no offense taken. That's one of the coolest compliments we could ever give them.
Mm.
So,
Bigger than one person.
yeah, pretty neat. So, yeah, there are a lot of different emotions, but I think that's one of the most unique aspects about coaching at the Air Force Academy is showing our people that if they commit to something and they're determined and they invest in it and work hard at it, they can probably do some things beyond what they believe they're capable of. And also just as cool as maybe they do some things that other people don't think they're capable of. So I think that's always a unique aspect of working here.
I imagine in the group huddle before a race or team meeting the night before, the workout leading into the race, or discussions at summer training camp, like, you guys, I'm sure, have to have a crazy chip on your shoulder. You probably do these kids show up to these meets and think, we know we're different than everyone? Like, we know no one knows who we are individually, but somehow we can kick ass and get low on the board?
There have been people that have come through the program that, yeah, we like to prove what we can do. And we know that there are times that we're overlooked and it kind of becomes a little bit of bulletin board material, as a motive. But at the end of the day, you want to take a group of people that are really enjoying what they're doing together and see how far they can go. And that doesn't really matter who we're competing against or what other people think. It's really seeing how far you can go with people that you care about, and sort of that kind of cliche daily process of just enjoying what you're doing. So yeah, there's definitely an element of people are maybe overlooking us. I tell our team, I hope every year people look at our roster and say, oh, this person graduated, that person graduated, so Air Force is going to take a step back. And then come November, proving those people wrong. That's always something that we strive for and hopefully look forward to. But I think you don't want to get too overly concerned about the external factors. You want to continue to focus on what you're trying to do, who you're doing it with, and why you're doing it. And when the team gets nervous, I like to try to remind them, if somebody seems like they're getting a little uptight, it's like, guys, it's just running. You put on little shorts, you go run around. It hurts for a while. You think you can't finish. 10 minutes later, you're standing there with your little cup of Gatorade, all sweaty, and you feel completely fine most of the time. Like, come on, let's not make more of it than it is. And one of the coolest things that we do every year, we have senior speeches. And so we get together in our auditorium, and the team has to listen to me talk a lot. So it's good for me to sit in the back and shut up. And the seniors get to stand up in front of the team, and they leave their parting advice. Tell them what they've learned, what to carry forward. And we had a guy on the team a few years ago that he says, Coach Cole loves to always say that it's just running. But if you've come through our program, it's about a lot more than that. So we try to focus on that and what our people get out of that, rather than maybe being distracted or overly fixated on the external stuff.
When you think about the Sam Gilmans and the Ryan Johnsons, you told me that sort of quote of people saying, man, I don't like, how are they going to replace these spots? It reminds me of talking with Coach Milt and talking about, Ethan Strand and Parker Wolf. And then before him, there was like the Grant Fisher, Sean McGorty era. And now he's sort of having to take the call up and who's going to replace Parker and Ethan. Will they ever? Those guys were not just historic within their program, but historic within the NCAA. How do you think about replacing those spots, or even bringing up new guys who, because when you say replace, it's like it innately is comparing versus maybe there are new guys that could do things Sam or Ryan could never do because they're unique talents or sensibilities, whatever it might be.
Well, I think in a way, you just compared Ryan Johnson and Sam Gilman to Grant Fisher and Sean McGorty. And when those guys were going through the recruiting process and graduating from high school, no one was comparing, those guys. And so the fact that you're mentioning them in the same topic is a huge compliment to Sam and Ryan and their development.
Real quick, if I may, it's funny because Sam now does similar or is sometimes in workouts with Grant Fisher. So it all comes full circle.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to make it seem like, we get people that are not good runners and just kind of diamonds in the rough sort of thing. But we are very proud of the development that a lot of our people have. And I think when you look at trying to replace a Sam Gilman or Ryan Johnson, those guys came into the program striving to see how good they can be. And I hope that their senior speech or their lasting message to the team is an example that if you come in and you commit and you develop, you might be that next guy. I mean, I think Ryan Johnson's PR in high school was 9:20 for 2 miles. So having guys come into the program and girls come into the program that maybe don't quite have those, who's who of NXN or Brooks championship type of accolades, but still seeing how far they can go and start to get to that same level as those, elite high school athletes by the time they're done with college. That's always our focus. And so we call it senior drop-in. It's guys and girls that are developing kind of behind the scenes. And then, you have some people graduate and all of a sudden it looks like Air Force is going to take a step back. And then maybe sometimes they even take a step forward. And there were quite a few years ago, we had our first girl that really broke through at that level. She won the mountain region in cross country her senior year. And then she was the first Service Academy female at the Division I level to be an All-American in all 3 seasons in the same year. And when we're sending out emails, building out our schedule for the next year, one of the meet directors for, a race we were hoping to get into, emailed me back and said, yeah, your guys are always good. They're in, but tell me more about the women because so-and-so graduated, right? And I went to practice and I told the girls, I was like, hey, so-and-so graduated, so we're not supposed to be very good this year, apparently. That group was the 2016 team that qualified for the national championships, first Service Academy women's team to ever qualify for a D1 championship. And they weren't better because that one really good girl graduated and left. They were better because she showed what could be done, and then we just needed more women to have more time to do what needed to be done so that they could start to attain that level. So it's really cool seeing maybe people look at our program and say, well, this person graduated, how do you replace them? And you never know where that next person is going to come from that develops. And, 3 years later, you're looking back being like, who was this person? No one saw it really coming. And that's a pretty cool aspect about our program.
With all love to the 920 guys, I was never a 920 guy in high school, but 920 is not what you would think someone would turn into with Ryan in his case, or Plop, as you guys affectionately call him.
Yep.
And so it's like, what do you see in the recruiting process with these people? How do you, you're a director's dream in terms of like a coaching hire where it's like everyone's competing for these four flat guys, these 405 guys. And for you to say, let's take someone that no one's looking at. Let's take someone that no one's paying attention to. And so we can maybe get him easier because there's less competition to get him. And we're going to turn, a Sam Gilman into a, All-American. And every single time he lined up on the track, me watching, not even knowing him that well at the time, I was like, oh, he could win an NCAA title. And you would never have thought that his senior year of high school. I had no clue who he was. So is it characteristics? Is it something that comes up in an interview with them? Like, how do you find these guys who go from, again, I'm careful with my verbiage here, but average, mediocre, average on the good end to some of the best runners in the NCAA by the end of their 4 years?
Well, I think they're definitely competitive runners coming out of high school. I mean, Sam was pretty darn good. He had some ups and downs, but he had some marks that really stood out and got him onto our recruiting radar. But I also think that when you look at our process, a lot of it comes back to our institution and our mission, like why we exist. So if you're someone that we're going to have to worry about, are they going to get out of bed and go for their training session? That same person may have difficulty getting out of bed and going to class. People that have difficulty on a consistent basis getting out of bed and going to class are not going to survive at Air Force. So our institution has certain parameters that if somebody is going to apply and decide to come here, they have to be willing to embrace. And if they have those certain characteristics, just who they are as people, that they're willing to embrace that, a lot of those same characteristics carry over and are going to help them see how far they can go over their 4 years in Air Force and their athletic career as well. So I think that is a huge part of it, just the dynamic of our institution in terms of attracting a certain type of person, creating an environment or a structure that they have to, you can't stay up all night and usually thrive as a runner, and you can't stay up all night and usually thrive as a cadet. So they have to kind of embrace a certain lifestyle and thought process that really benefits them, not just here as a regular student, but also as someone aspiring to see if they can become an elite athlete. So I would love to tell you that we have like a checklist that we go down through, and it's like, all right, this person's going to be the next Sam Gilman. A big piece of that is talking to them in a very, like, I always tell our recruits as well as our young athletes, we're really transparent in this process. If this is just rolling out the red carpet and trying to wine and dine you, you may be in for a rude awakening when you get on that bus on day one of basic training and they start providing that loud verbal guidance on where they want you to go and how they want you to get there. So we put our recruits on their visits up in the dorms so they can kind of job shadow for a day and sort of, live the life of a cadet for a day to see if it's really for them. Because I would rather they not come here if it's not the right fit for them. And then I would rather not, we may be missing out on somebody who would be a great fit because we take somebody that we misled or maybe didn't share the full, opportunity or situation within the recruiting process. So I do think the institution is a big piece of that. And then our transparency in the process is a big piece of that. And then the last piece is really the culture that the men and women have on the team. Letting them know, hey, if you're going to be a part of this, these are the expectations. This is what we do. And we tend to attract a lot of team-oriented people because they're signing up to go into a career of service. So, again, I think there's a lot of overlap between our institution and what it takes to see how far you can go developing in our sport.
I didn't think I was going to bring up a romantic analogy, but I think it fits here. I've long heard the saying that I highly believe in of you can't create a fabricated version of yourself to another person, because even if they love that version of you, it's a fabricated version of you, so they never actually loved you. How I think that relates to this that I want to ask you about is it almost sounds like you kind of show them the hell that it is to live there a little bit. And if they like it, they're going to love it and thrive. Versus this wine and dining of a recruiting trip, and here are the Colorado mountains, and here are our facilities, and everyone's so happy, and this is so great. They might love that, but then they get on, and they have to wake up at whatever crazy time you guys do, and it's like, oh man, this is not what I remember.
Well, Dominic, we show them the unique developmental opportunity that the Air Force Academy presents. But yeah, there are some challenges in that. And again, if somebody's turned off by that, like, I can get it to a degree. It's like, hey, I want to go all in on my running. Like, I only have so much of my life to do that. College is a great opportunity where, overall adult responsibilities are pretty low. So I want to lean all in on running. I get that. But at the same time, I'm not sure you're getting everything you can out of that experience if that's the only thing you do. And at some point, it has a shelf life. And so that next phase of your life, I think one of the things I'm most proud of our people, regardless how fast they run, they take that experience of being a part of our program and the skill set that they develop, and then it goes and carries on into whatever they go out and do in their life. As good as Chris Floyd was at making those videos, I know that in his life right now, he's just as good at whatever he's deciding to do. And that will continue, because it's not just about Chris as a videographer or Sam as a runner. It's about them as people. So again, I think that's largely set by our institution, but then we hope we elevate that through our platform here in athletics with cross country and track and field.
Yeah, and to clarify too, even with my hell comment, it's like, if I was to take a random person on the street and put them in your day-to-day life, they might hate it, but you love it. Same with me. There are so few people on the outside, they may glamorize my life. Very, very, very few people would love my life. I love my life. It's amazing. But the average person would maybe list all the hardships, and I'm just like, well, I didn't even notice that. I didn't even notice that I was up till 1 a.m. last night working. I just kind of wanted to. It's what I did. So I find with these programs, the kids that do the best in them, whether it's an Air Force or a Oregon or a UNC, it's like the certain set of demands that is expected of them from leadership, from team captains, from coaches. They don't even think of it, because the mental strain is real. If you're in a situation where you're constantly thinking about the work that you have to do, rarely will it work out, versus this is just who I am and this is my lifestyle and I honestly enjoy it. I bet honestly, the two, I think I've had 2, maybe 3 of your guys on the podcast throughout the years, they talked about it with the utmost pride and joy. They loved their life. It wasn't like, oh man, it's like, I'm really struggling here. I don't, you have to love the thing. It can't feel how we're talking about it right now.
Well, I think it fits into their bigger picture too. So they understand why they're going through it. And I think when you when you understand the why, very similar to training, I think it makes it a lot easier to endure whatever the hardship may be in the short term or in the immediate, because you understand how it's getting you closer to where you want to be. And ultimately, where you want to be is a choice. Like, you don't have to come to the Air Force Academy. You don't have to pursue being an elite level runner. All of these things are choices that our people are making. And so I think keeping that perspective on it definitely helps embrace the moment you're in. And then the other thing that I think is pretty unique about it, I could understand where at some places coming to practice is another tasker. It's just another thing you have to do during the day. I think for a lot of our people, it's like one of the best parts of their day, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm done with class. I don't have homework to do right now. I get to go down and do something that I'm passionate about with some of my best friends. And I think a lot of people that really thrive in our sport, that's how they look at going to practice, right? When they get to go run. I mean, everybody has those days where, getting out the door, the first few steps, it might be a challenge. But more often than not, the people that really thrive, I think they love what they're doing. I think you have to if you really want to be successful at it.
I know in high school there's this fact, people think it's a myth, but it is a fact, of like the runners are the smart ones, or they turn out the best in life. I talked to Mike Scannell about that recently. He had some funny comments about that. Is there I'm just curious, I'm asking you because I feel like you'd know, is there a similar effect in the service academies where you notice the runners go on to do really big things within the military itself?
I mean, I'm probably a little biased, but yeah, our people are I do think runners tend to be very cerebral, very detail oriented, very structure oriented. So they get into a routine. I mean, come on, if you go run every day, it's pretty repetitive, right? So I think going to work and maybe doing some of the same things over and over and still trying to do it at a high level aligns with what they're accustomed to doing, just with their personality as somebody that gravitates toward our sport. But I also think when you look at service and the academy, a lot of our athletes, not just necessarily cross country or track and field, but a lot of the intercollegiate athletes that come through the service academies are they're very driven. They're very competition and success oriented. And I think that helps them as they go out and serve. And that's even amongst a group of peers where you're going to have people that are very success driven, regardless whether they're athletes or not here. And I think the athletes tend to do very well, even in comparison to the regular, I don't want to call them regular cadets, but the non-intercollegiate athletes at the service academies.
One of the hardest lessons I had to learn this year is you can't change someone. Like, they have to want it themselves, and they have to, you can tell them all the right things. You can show them, hey, this is like, you're doing this entirely wrong. This is what you want, or that you got to take this path to get to what you want, or you're living your life in XYZ way. And until they themselves accept that for themselves and take the steps to do it, they're not going to change. How do you view that sort of fact, unless you disagree, in lieu of recruiting a kid of like, yes, they can change in their time here, but they have to be adaptable to wanting to change. And ideally, I'm going to recruit a kid that I'm confident would be a good fit on day one and not a project. Hey, 3 years, he's fast, but he's not quite a fit. But maybe 2 years in, we can change him.
It's interesting that you bring that up. A few years ago, we had an instance where on paper, I think you could argue we landed someone who I felt was the best athletic recruit in my career at Air Force. I believe that, the person had like Olympic potential, and it didn't work out here at the Air Force Academy. And ultimately that person had to leave the institution because while he was a great athlete, he just didn't fit and he wasn't happy here. He had a teammate who on paper for cross country, you could argue outside of the Mike Ryan guy behind me, probably the most accomplished high school athlete we've had come to the Air Force Academy. And he commissioned. He's going to be a great officer. He probably could have been a phenomenal athlete. He didn't last very long in our program, and he just focused on being a cadet here. So what I always tell people, one was a great athlete, but not a great cadet athlete. The other was a great cadet, but not a great cadet athlete. If you're going to thrive in our program, you need to be both. So if someone comes in and they don't want to be a cadet, it's not going to work. If somebody comes in and they just want to be an athlete, or they don't want to be an athlete, it's not going to work. So it's really understanding what's going to be expected of you as a cadet and as an athlete. And like you mentioned, like the challenge and like somebody seeing the value in that and wanting to embrace that. Those are the type of people that tend to thrive here. And they're going to find out really quick. Like, this is a hard place to like suck it up for 3 years to see if you can figure it out. Like, you're going to find out again, like you're going to get on that bus day one and you're going to start being tested immediately. So I think the people that gravitate toward that and get excited about that opportunity or that challenge, yeah, as long as they're understanding what's going to be required and expected as both a cadet and an athlete, and they're willing to embrace that, they tend to do very well. But it is a bit of a self-selecting process as you go through learning about our institution, seeing the requirements to get in, and then what's expected of you once you're here.
Are there any cues you pick up on in recruiting? And I think this is a great conversation for other high-level coaches who listen to the podcast to learn from you, because I imagine it's almost, you've probably mastered this game to an extent. I'm sure you still have failures. I'm sure you have successes where you maybe don't expect it. But what cues do you pick up on in recruiting of like, because I know I'm monologuing here, but even it's so sexy on paper to say, I go to the Air Force Academy and I run, and you get to wear, again, apologies if this is disrespectful, whatever the fancy uniform you guys wear, you guys look amazing, right? You guys look so well put together. Probably grab a girl from the local city. You look amazing, right? Like it's on paper remarkable. And I'm sure a high school boy, a senior, a junior is fantasizing about that world. And it's like, oh, that's amazing. But it is very far apart from, the reality of what it takes to graduate over those 4 years and be excellent within the program. So how do you sort of pick up on those cues of like, even to the kids saying, hey, I want to do this. Okay, do you actually want to do this because it looks cool on paper, or like you're actually bought in for the right reasons?
I mean, is that any different than somebody saying, man, I want to make the Olympics. I want to be an Olympian, or I want to be a national champion or All-American. Like it seems kind of sexy. You're at the top of your group, your game, your level, and then you start to see the work. So a lot of people, I think, like the idea of it until they start to see what's required. And then ultimately you find out how important it is to them. So as we go through the process of just talking with people about the Air Force Academy, you do look for certain characteristics. I always, right after COVID, there was a lot of online schooling. And so you would ask people, how is that? And some high school kids would tell you, like, it's terrible. Like, I miss being around my friends. I miss, like, somebody in class may say something, and I'm like, man, I didn't think about that. I miss being able to, like, one-on-one have an in-person conversation with my instructor. And then other people are like, Coach, it's great. Like, I didn't even brush my teeth before logging into class. I was still in bed. I had my pajamas on. I flipped open my laptop. The person that, didn't brush their hair is not going to probably be overly excited about putting on the uniform and making sure they're wearing it right, at 6:30 in the morning when they have to go to class. So there are certain characteristics that you look for. Are people schedule oriented? If somebody is excited about college because they don't like having to go to class every day in high school, and in college you only have to go to class maybe 2 or 3 times a week, or you can do all online classes, that person's not going to be a fit with USAFA. If somebody's like, I like to be there, I like to get into a routine, I like to know what's expected of me, I like to have my schedule, those people are going to fit really well. So there are some characteristics that we look for, but also people that are challenge oriented. If somebody's not excited about seeing what they're capable of in the next phase of their life, I'm not sure not only how good of a runner they're going to be, but is that person going to be a good fit with our institution? And even if they end up being kind of that sort of, lackadaisical, but man, they're amazingly talented and they're competitively tough and, they have a great athletic career, there still is a bigger picture. When that person commissions and graduates, we've invested in, as a country, we've invested in those people to go out and serve as a leader in the Air Force. We need to expect that they're going to do that really well. That's why we're here. So it is not just about the athletic aspect. It's about making sure that the person has certain characteristics or tendencies that are going to fit athletically, but also at our institution. But I would think most coaches, they want to know at minimum that when practice is scheduled, you're going to be there, and hopefully you're there a few minutes early. They're going to want to know that you're dependable. And so I think, again, those type of characteristics we look for our institution, but I would think every coach, we always kind of joke a little bit, sort of half joking that, in this day and age, a lot of sports, people care more about the name on the back than the one on the front. And I always tell our recruits and our team, we don't have names on the back of our jersey, and we take a lot of pride in the one on the front. Oh. If that doesn't resonate with someone, they're not going to fit here. And I would think most coaches would be
Coach Cole, you're going to make me dedicate the next 4 years of training, man, to get recruited by you. Say that again one more time.
No, we always say that, it's not about the name on the back. We don't have names on the back, but we take a lot of pride in the one on the front.
It's amazing. Why Air Force, right? So I could talk to you for 3 hours, so I'll try to condense these answers down. But Navy, West Point, you guys, same team, which is why I love the Army-Navy game. They make it clear on the broadcast.
Yeah.
But there is a rivalry between these three schools, and you're probably recruiting. If someone is inclined to run for the Air Force, I'm assuming they've at least thought of the other two. Why Air Force? What makes it special?
I agree. I think
Besides
if somebody
the B-2 bombers, let's just get that out of the way.
Oh man, that's a great question. I think all three service academies are phenomenal institutions. They're places filled with people that have signed up to do something a little bit more than just about themselves. And the process that they go through, not only to get into those schools, but to go through those institutions and graduate, is different than every other school out there. And even if it's, there are some really good academic schools out there, there are some very strong athletic schools out there, and then there are some very strong schools that provide opportunities in both at the same time. I mean, I'll use Notre Dame as an example. By reputation, strong academic school. They usually have pretty darn good athletics. Going to Notre Dame, you do not have 6 weeks of basic training before your first day of class as a freshman. If you're somebody that's excited and embraces that because you see value in that at any of the three service academies, you're a little different. So I think all three institutions are pretty tremendous, where they are filled with places or with people that are, I'm probably a little biased, but I think they're pretty special. I do think each branch or each service academy has some nuances. I'm pretty fortunate that I coach at the Air Force Academy. I mean, if you want to be a distance runner living at 7,000 feet in the largest Division I campus in the NCAA with over 18,000 acres, it's about the most ideal training setup you could have here. That's a benefit that we have over the other two service academies. But if you want to work on a nuclear submarine, like athletics are great, but for your career, you want to work on a nuclear submarine, you go to Navy. The thing that I think sets Air Force apart are the opportunities. I think when you look at the diverse types of opportunities, if you want to be quote unquote tip of the spear, you can do that here. If you want to be somebody that sets yourself up to run a multi-million-dollar business or corporation in the future, you can do that here. If you want to be somebody that flies multi-million-dollar airframes, you can do that here. If you're somebody that values getting a high caliber academic education, seeing how strong you can be as a Division I athlete, and then go out and take advantage of the opportunity to have a guaranteed job for 5 years and then see where it goes from there. Frankly, you can do that here too. So I like the idea that at Air Force, we're a very academic-oriented institution. We are very technologically based, airspace and cyberspace. That's why we exist. But you have the opportunity to live in the most modern installations in the military. You have the opportunity to travel around the world. You're going to be surrounded by a lot of phenomenal people, regardless of your gender, regardless of your background. And you're going to be challenged and supported throughout your time here. So I think the Air Force as a specific branch and an educational opportunity is a little bit unique among the service academies. But then when it comes to cross country and distance running, our sport's pretty objective. So I hope when, whether it's a recruit or somebody evaluating our program, they look at our history of success. And if you want to chalk it up to the altitude, if you want to chalk it up to the environment that our people operate in or the culture on our team, we've proven that you can compete at a high level here. And so I hope that would also be a factor in why Air Force versus, maybe the other two service academies. But I think all three institutions are phenomenal. And any young person that goes to any three of those schools, they're pretty special.
Unbiased, who's got the best uniforms?
What sport?
Some
of the Army-Navy football game ones.
Yeah, it's hard to beat. We'll go running. Running is
some of those uniforms are pretty awesome.
We'll go your own sport. Running.
Hey,
track and
field.
field.
I was going to say the Air Force football helmets have been pretty cool at times. I think in cross country and track and field, I think some of the Air Force uniforms are hard to beat.
How come you guys get multiple variations and the other schools don't? Just the deal you guys have signed? I mean, I remember the Chris Floyd era, the black ones at Nuttycombe. Oh my gosh. Because that was the Space Force edition, right?
Yeah.
And that's like Phil Knight money right there. That's what you'd think Oregon would be doing.
A lot of that started with our team.
Okay.
And I do think, to give props where they're due, probably a lot of that started with Oregon, when they started doing the 10 different uniform combos, and then you saw a lot of people start to do that. But I do think, though, there are situations where, you see schools stick with their home and away because it's tradition. And this is going to be a really kind of cliche answer, but when you ask like who has the best uniforms, again, I'm going to say Air Force, and it has nothing to do with the design. It's about the name or the logo on the front.
And
So,
by the way, politically, if I was PR coaching you, you'd be called into your AD's office if that wasn't the response. So it's a silly question on my end, but
yeah, it's not so much the uniform; it's the person wearing it. And again, I think all 3 service academies have pretty special people, but I probably am a little biased.
What do they call the like Navy's? It's the dress blues, right? What do they call the like things you guys wear formation in for each?
Yeah, so
each
our uniforms, like, so the fancier one, more of like the suit looking one, are blues or service dress, depending on what level of formality it is or what the event is. And then we have OCPs, that's kind of the camouflage print. And then we have PT, which is more for exercising and that sort of thing. But when we come to practice, I mean, our team is, they run in normal running stuff. We call it civilian stuff. But yeah, they train in their team gear just like a normal school.
And if you're Coach Cole, you get the all blue AF polo that you're wearing.
I mean, I have so much blue in my closet. If I wasn't wearing blue on this call, I probably would feel like, it was the weekend. So it's kind
of
out
of place.
Yeah. But
yeah.
No, Dominic, so one thing really cool that we do, and we've been made fun of this. In fact, so a funny story in cross country. So you have your uniform that you wear for like PE or for basic training or physical. We call it like our PT or our physical training uniform. Basically, it's just like a cotton ringer, or now it's a little more mesh, but it's just a t-shirt and shorts, right? But they have your name and your year. And so when people graduate, we have them leave one of their shirts behind. And there's one meet that we go to. It's usually Nutty Comb. And we do the course preview the day before, and everybody on that trip, they get to pick an alum's shirt and wear that shirt. And then usually we try to do a post on social media and tag the alums so that they can see, that their shirt's being worn at the course. And there was one time back when Justin Knight was in college that we were in Louisville for pre-nats, and the guys were wearing these like cotton, like white pit stained, sweaty, like ringer tees. And they went running by the Syracuse guys. And I think Justin Knight made a comment, probably a little sarcastically, like, man, Air Force gets all the best gear, because it looked like a junior high gym class running by, right? And one of our guys, who ended up being, a pretty darn good runner, was just so excited that they got, a shout out from Justin Knight on their junior high gym uniform. And so that's something that we've continued to do, just to honor our alums and kind of a little nod to them, letting them know we haven't forgot everything that they've done for us, and just honor them. And so that's something that I hope all of our current team members look forward to, is, hey, when I graduate, one of my PT shirts is going to get left behind. And at some point in the future, maybe there'll be somebody warming up for one of the biggest cross country meets of the year, with my name on their chest. So that's pretty cool.
That's incredible. That's a super cool story.
Not the most stylish thing. It doesn't look all that good, but it's, yeah.
Hey, in the era where everything's flashy and cool, sometimes you got to revert. In fact, my parents will always tell me, like Birkenstocks, I bought my first pair 2 years ago, and they go, we were wearing these in the 70s and 80s. And they made a joke that I actually think is kind of true. They're like, a lot of your generation style is actually going back decades and bringing all this stuff back. So I don't know. Yeah, vintage. The boomers still got it, as the kids would say. I asked you about, Air Force versus Navy, West Point. For you, you mentioned you didn't go to the military. Why Air Force for you? You could coach at any school. Why Air Force? What makes it stand out? And why do you believe and buy into it so much, specifically as someone who wasn't an alumni?
The environment. It really is the environment. And that environment is set by our mission. So again, our institution sets parameters that make it pretty streamlined about why we're recruiting, why we're here, what our expectation is, and it's ultimately using a lot of different platforms. Like when I drove into work today, there's a summer program going on right now called Jump. We're the only place in the United States where you go to class for a week, then they take you up in a plane, you have a backpack with 3 parachutes in there, and no one is strapped to you, and out you go. And so your first jump is solo. Only place in the U.S. that does that. And that's class credit. Somebody like us, Dominic, we pay $300 to have like a stranger strapped to us with the GoPro stick to document that we did it, right? That we had the courage to go out of the plane. Here, the cadets get to do it for free, and it's class credit. So when you look at all the different experiences that our people have here, we use the athletic experience to help prepare them for what they're going to go on to do next. I buy into it because I have seen firsthand those experiences benefit our people from the time they're 18 to 22 or 18 to 23, or maybe even a little bit beyond, depending the person, to see how fast they can run or how high they can jump or how far they can throw. So the experiences that you have here not only lend themselves really well to being an elite athlete, but it's really easy to buy into when that next phase of your life comes. That same skill set is going to set you up really, really well for whatever you go on to do in your life. And that's pretty special. So in a way, there are definitely challenges here, but it's really easy to buy into that because it's just so unique and so special. And it lends itself so well to something I highly value, which is trying to help these people see how fast they can run.
When you think about your story, your journey, what elements do you want to share with the audience? Again, these conversations are so hard, specifically when you speak how you do, and there's all these subjects we can go into. Sometimes I feel bad that I don't give the guests enough time to share their own personal stories. So what are some of those glimmers or chapters that led up to this current version of Coach Cole I'm speaking with?
But I think I've been very fortunate to have a lot of good mentors. The experiences that I've had as an athlete, sometimes were not as successful as I would have liked them to have been, but I think maybe some of those challenges you have as an athlete make you a better coach. But I mean, I grew up with a father that coached high school track and field and cross country for over 30 years. So as a little kid, when August would roll around, having a bunch of high schoolers in the driveway getting ready to go run, or seeing them eat popsicles afterwards after they just did like hill repeats or something. That was the environment that I grew up in, and I'm very grateful for that. In college, I had two very good coaches, both named Jerry. Learned a lot from both of them. Very grateful to have been able to be in their programs. And then when I started coaching, I got to work for Louis Quintana, who's now at Oregon State. I think he's a phenomenal coach and an even more phenomenal person. I was very fortunate to be a part of a program that was a very good track and field program. So it wasn't one dimensional. It wasn't, a really good sprint school, but the distance runners were kind of an afterthought, or it wasn't a really good throw school, but it was like, the field events are the priority, but what goes on in the track's not important. So getting to experience that at a really high level was something that was very impactful for me early on in my coaching career. And then getting to be at the Air Force Academy, where I think every coach has people that they hope end up okay. The reason they're on your team at the collegiate level is probably because they're fairly capable as athletes, but you kind of hope that, man, when they're no longer a part of this, I hope that they're okay. I hardly worry about anybody that comes through our program at Air Force in that regard. I know they're going to go and thrive. So in terms of like why Air Force and what makes this special, and, pursuing other coaching opportunities, like everywhere has its challenges and everywhere has its rewards, but I think the rewards at the Air Force Academy are unmatched. Some of the challenges are pretty tough too, Dominic. It'd be sometimes nice to be like, what was that degree you said a lot of the people at NAU are majoring in? I'm not sure we
Communications.
have that. Oh, okay. All right.
That's the classic cakewalk. You'll have time to kick up your legs because the test.
Well, we don't have forestry management either. But, I think our people here, no matter how fast they run or how well they do in whatever their sport may be while they're a cadet, they realize that they're capable of a lot more than maybe they think they can. Coming through here with their academic load, with their requirements outside of being a student or an athlete, and they still prove to themselves they can succeed at a really high level. That's something that you don't get everywhere as a coach. So my coaching journey to get to this point, I've been very fortunate and frankly a bit lucky. And I only hope that I've contributed to the people that I've got to work with in a way that helps them be successful when they're no longer worrying about how many miles a week they're running, or what place they're going to be at some upcoming meet.
What's the legacy you want to leave behind? And you mentioned last coach, 33 years, the impact he had on you. I'm sure you could get choked up if you think about it a lot. And he set the bar, right? And so it's probably less of chasing his ghost as much as it's sort of creating your own unique story and legacy. And your guys adore you, love you. I've wanted to have you on this podcast for years because just whether it was the videos or my conversations with them personally or privately or publicly, they adore you. When you think about the end time for you, whether it's, next week or 33 years from now, what's the legacy you want to leave behind in Colorado Springs?
I think it goes back to that's a tough one. I think it goes back to not only believing, but knowing that if you commit to something and you're determined and resilient on it, you will surprise yourself at how successful you can be. In this day and age where college sports are becoming much more professionalized, I hope that the developmental educational experience of that, of learning that, if I know it's kind of the cliche, like you set your mind to something, you can't always do everything that you dream of or that you want to set your mind to, but it is amazing how far you can go and how successful you can be if you're willing to commit to it. And I hope that in some small way, people will look back as they go through their life on their experience of being a part of AFXC or Air Force Track and Field, and will feel that we helped contribute to that. And if that holds true in some degree for most of the people that come through our program, the trophies are nice. Proving people kind of wrong with how successful you can be is great. I hope that's what people look back on and really cherish.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Before we wrap up, and I want to make you a promise, you're welcome on this podcast anytime, maybe after cross country season. There are hours I could talk to you for, and I feel like this was just, it's just remarkable how much we covered in an hour while still not covering a ton of stuff that I want to talk to you about. So you're welcome back anytime, and I want to get you back on the podcast. But one of the subjects I really wanted to ask you about today was, and I'm unbiased, I have favorite coaches. I publicly state on the record who they are. I really enjoy certain people, enjoy learning from people. They'll come on my show multiple times, but I'm also unbiased, right? So with shoe companies, with schools, I can just say it how I see it and be honest and push back or whatever. My honest assessment for you is there's never been a time to be a coach at a service academy and have a greater recruiting pitch without needing one, which is where NIL is going, where these 8th year seniors are going, where these international transfers. You guys, by definition, are going to be the last standing American systems. And just by definition, by fact, you can't take a 5th year at a service academy. I don't believe you can take any NIL money. You guys are grassroots. And I think that a 14-year-old American boy listening right now maybe didn't know those things and is immediately thinking, oh, wow, yeah, I kind of hate where the NCAA is going. Let's stat pack these schools and win the chip. Let's win a national title. I would love that if that happens in my lifetime. How do you think about that, where it's like the NCAA is going so far left that maybe you guys being the last really institution to just, you have to do it that way. You can't change. This rule's not going to change. The U.S. government's not going to start letting foreigners, be in the military. Like, talk to me about that. And do you take pride in that? Is that in recruiting pitches anymore? Have you seen kids come to you and talk about that? I mean, the NCAA has drastically changed from when you took the reins over in 2022 to 2026. It's a completely different sport.
Absolutely. I think no matter what changes occur in the NCAA or, out in our athletic society at large, our mission here at the Air Force Academy will remain the same. And why we have athletics at the Air Force Academy will remain the same. I still focus on the development of our people. And if we're developing men and women like we feel like we can, and like we've shown we can, and we get enough of them at any given time, we're going to be a hard out. I think with what you're seeing right now, the margin for error is becoming much smaller, as there are just so many. I think there are coaches, a lot more coaches, just doing a really good job. I think there are a lot of teams that maybe weren't as competitive, maybe in cross country, that are getting better. We're going to continue to focus on what we need to do to see what the best version of Air Force cross country will be for our men and women in any given year. But we do take pride in that. We take pride in developing American kids and using that experience not just to see how far they can go athletically, but setting them up for after. But yeah, I guess more like big picture or conceptual, as somebody that remembers those mornings in August as a little kid, seeing the high school cross country team out in the driveway. And I mean, I was probably a little bit stubborn in my younger years, and I got to run for my father, which was in high school, which was an experience I'm very grateful for. But I would always argue with him, like, this person's not training enough. This person doesn't care enough. Why are they on the team? And it was, he would always try to get it through to me that, do you realize some of these people may not graduate high school if it's not for the community that they have on the cross country team? That these people may not have any friends. They're kind of quiet, and they may not talk to people if it wasn't for being a part of our cross country team. That's their community now. So I think when you look at our sport overall, I hope that no matter what developments occur within the collegiate system, that there are going to be opportunities for American high school kids to go to NAIA, to go to D3, to go to D2, to go D1, and get the experience of being a part of something. I mean, I'm a little biased as a former runner, right? But get to be a part of something that's pretty darn special. And so no matter where, that landscape goes over the next decade, the next 2 decades, I hope that there are a lot of coaches that can look beyond just maybe what's best for their team or their program or their situation over the next 6 months, and continue to work collectively to try to provide these opportunities to young people, because they're pretty special. And most coaches got to experience those when they were athletes. That's why they win. I mean, it's pretty rare for somebody to become a coach that never got to participate in that as a young person. So I hope as coaches, we don't forget that, and we continue to work to provide those opportunities to not just young American kids, but people going through the collegiate system as a part of their developmental experience. And I hope that doesn't go away.
Well, I'll tell you this, back in high school, podcast was probably early days, but I wasn't talking to people like yourself. I remember going on runs with buddies and talking about the Air Force program as one of the options if we could go D1, because of how it was starting to look, what Chris was starting to do with the videos. Not even, I wouldn't say making you guys look flashy as much as just properly documenting what it was like. And I think what stood out to me at the time was the culture, was the buy-in, was the brotherhood and sisterhood. And so it's been really cool to see you guys evolve into all that you are today. And it's just, I think it's objectively cool as a proud American to see our service academies produce such excellent people and then have excellent sporting teams. It's why every year when I would see Navy, in the top 25 or making a bowl game, it was always special. It was like, wow, this is objectively impressive. And then to see it done in my own sport has been, just remarkable. So I'm a fan. I'm so glad we could make this conversation happen. Again, we'll have to run it back soon and talk about more, as I know that there's hours more worth of discussion that can be had. But final question for you today, sort of the core motto for my life is helping people turn their what ifs into realities, stemmed from the what if I start a podcast in 8th grade, and then my whole life and reality being shaped by taking action on that what if. I believe so many people have these dreams and goals, so few people act on them. And I think the people that act on them are the people that are on the other side of the screen from me, or if you're watching USA's yesterday, if you're a listener, those are the people that took swings at those big dreams. So for you personally, what is a what if that you had for your life, and how has taking action on that what if changed your life in the process?
Well, I think one of them, was taking the job at Air Force. And I think as a young coach, you want to see how successful you can be. So the what if was, what if I go to Air Force? Am I going to be limiting myself to try to have the coaching career that I'd like to have? And that was a big concern when I first came to the academy. And that's also, I think, a valid concern, or an understandable concern, that a lot of our recruits have when we're talking to them about joining our program. Like, if I go there, am I going to be limiting myself? And then I don't know if it's so much an action that I've taken as much as watching the athletes that I get to work with and the people in our program. They've shown me that not only can you come here and succeed, but I truly believe that the experiences that they go through here are actually going to make them succeed at a higher level than maybe they would if they weren't here. So I think the what if is, is this going to be the right move from a career standpoint at Air Force? And then I'm really, it wasn't my action, it was more of theirs. Really grateful for the people that I've got to coach, showing what could be done, and showing that it's not just about athletics. So that's been pretty awesome. And I hope we can keep that going. And I appreciate you having me on and being a fan of our program.
Yeah, Coach Cole, thanks for the time. You're a legend. And Thank you for helping to produce the men and women who lay their lives down every single day for the sake of our great country and run some fast times in the process beforehand. So appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Dominic. I appreciate you too.